Welcome in, everyone, to episode 24 of Girl, How'd You Get That Gig? Yeah, Amy showing the numbers. For my co-host, Amy G, I'm Celeste Gehring. Our guest today is someone I got to know well, covering the Sochi Olympics. At the time, she was working PR for Red Bull, but since has started her own company, Gold Tree PR, a public relations firm. Ilana Taub is taking the time to join us before she heads to Paris for the Summer Olympics. So exciting. Welcome in, Ilana.
Yay.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to meet you. Oh my gosh. And I want her hair. I'm just going to throw that out there already. Okay. I'm going to practice my French on you. So, comment allez-vous? That's how we're going to start. That's all I know.
I'm on day 101 of my Duolingo French streak. Pronunciation is impossible. I give up, but I can at least maybe ask for the bathroom and order tea or coffee. That's about where I'm at. Or the check.
The check.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Then you're set.
Yeah.
There you go. It's perfect. Okay. So Ilana, before we get to your illustrious career and finding out how you became your own boss, literally, we always like to kick off the show with a game. It's called Girl Gig Quick Pick. It's a mouthful and a handful. It's a trivia game. It's just to settle you in, and in honor of where the Olympics are this year in Paris, we thought we'd kind of round it around that topic. So what do you think? You ready?
I can't say I'm going to do great, but I'm ready nonetheless.
I think you're going to do fantastic because the first one is multiple choice. So here we go. Starting in 1944. Les Parisiens. I don't even know how to say it. So how is she going to get it right? Parisian. Les Parisiens is one of the top selling daily what in France? A croissant, a museum ticket, a newspaper, or a bicycle?
I'm going to go with newspaper.
Ding, 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 ding. 100%. 100%.
Right. She's on a roll. Okay, another multiple choice for you. Okay, 1924 Paris Olympic Games. The official Latin motto was, oh my gosh, why did I even put this word in?
That was mean, Celeste. Good luck.
Citius Altuus Fortis, which in English translates to faster, higher, what? Okay. Faster, higher, stronger.
I'm going to give her
faster, higher, further. Faster, higher, longer. Or faster, higher, happier.
I'm going to go stronger, but I hope I'm not just mixing it up with like a Kanye song or something.
No.
Good job.
We wouldn't do that to you. I promise. Good job. Okay. True or false? Notre Dame is a famous cathedral in Paris, which opened in 1345.
I don't know the year, but that sounds fairly true.
It is. Yes.
Easy for you. Easy. Yeah. Okay. Last one. True or false? Crème brûlée is the #1 dessert in Paris.
I'm going to go false. It's true?
Yeah.
Oh, I was thinking like a chocolate croissant or something.
Yeah, I know. I'm surprised.
That's probably #2.
I think there are better things, but that's just in my humble opinion.
Have you guys seen the cookie croissants that are really viral in Paris? That's like one of my missions is to get the cookie croissant. There's apparently some bakery that makes thousands a day and there's a line out the door. So
what is a cookie croissant then? It's like
a croissant with cookie dough integrated into it. So when you break it open, it's like cookie dough in a croissant.
Stop it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I mean, I could eat cookie dough all day long. My mom would always be like, there's raw eggs in that. You shouldn't do that.
I think that's a myth.
Like, I don't care.
Yeah.
It is a myth. It is. Okay, now we can talk about Ilana.
Yes. Okay.
Who dreads swimsuit shopping? We do, that's for sure, and that's why friend of our program, Denise Foley, created Sunset Vibes Swimwear. If you want to look good, feel good, and wear a suit that fits perfectly, check out sunsetvibesswimwear.com. Most brands use generic grading to determine sizes, but Sunset Vibes Swimwear took more than 2 years to fit test over 100 women from size 2 to size 26, ensuring every curve was considered and every body type fit to a T. Everything is sustainable, made in LA, and ladies, you deserve to feel amazing in swimwear. That's Sunset Vibes, VIBES swimwear.com, and the search for the perfect swimsuit is over.
So what is the gist of public relations, and how would you describe what you do as the owner of your PR firm?
Yeah, so PR kind of has two components or things that can be mixed. There's like media relations, and then there's kind of this media relations, but also sort of communications. So a lot of what I do is dealing with media. So getting clients interviews, talking with journalists, coming up with stories, photo shoots, things like that. And there's also general communications about how do you get your message out. And that could be traditional media, or that could be helping write press releases or content for the company itself, helping with social media strategy, basically, especially as things evolve, how do people find out about you or your company? And that can be in a variety of ways. So whether it's via third-party media, via your own outlets, sort of how do we communicate your story to the outside world?
Mm. I work with a publicist, and she has a lot of different types of work. Like she'll work on people's books that just came out. She works with athletes. She helps with like community service type of stuff, fundraising. Are you diversified like that, or do you work on a specific thing as a publicist?
So I'm a bit diversified. I think just the role itself, you always wear a lot of hats. I would say I do have my niche, which is sports PR, but I've also worked on communications materials for companies, again, writing the content you would see on their website, or working on media training with athletes or executives, so how they can present themselves on camera, and then social media planning. So I would say that 80-90% still falls in my sports PR bucket, but then I occasionally dabble in those other elements of communications.
And then going to the Olympics, what can you share about what your role will be while you're there?
So for this games, and I'm excited to say it's going to be my 6th Olympics in person after the COVID break. So I'll be working for Omega, who is the official timekeeper of the Olympics. So they do a lot on site. Part of what they do is host media, and they have a lovely hospitality zone called the Omega House. So I will probably be physically in the Omega House much of the time, hosting media, working with journalists on stories. And then Omega also sponsors athletes and has ambassadors. So I'd be working with the athletes, working on stories. So hopefully people win some gold medals. We can be able to do some media celebrations with them. And so, yeah, I'll be there with Omega.
Wow. And those houses are amazing. Just going to those houses in Sochi and London blew my mind. Just how much is going on in them. They're giving free massages. They're doing all sorts of activations. They are just amazing.
Yeah, for people who don't know, sort of when we talk about houses, so at the Olympics, different brands, sponsors, entities all kind of have their hospitality zone, and they're usually just a house, whether it's, an actual house or a hotel or something they take over. So USA House is where Team USA has their celebrations. A lot of different countries have their own houses, brands, so for example, like at the P&G House, you could get a haircut or do your laundry, and then the Omega House is very bougie and sort of, fancy. So yeah, all these different brands and entities, and it's sort of like, which houses can you get into? It's kind of a fun thing to see how many you can visit.
And get the freebies, because usually you get some really great swag. I'm
I'm
down there for the swag. Let's go.
I mean, I've definitely had Olympics where like all my real meals have been at someone's, activation house.
All right, let's go to the beginning of your timeline, Ilana. Where did you grow up, and when did your connection to sports begin?
So I grew up in Northern California in the San Jose, Silicon Valley area. And I just grew up in a family that was really into sports. So my dad had season tickets to the Niners. He had season tickets to the Giants that we shared with people. And so went to a lot of like the baseball, football games, watched, I was lucky enough to grow up in the sort of Joe Montana Niners era. So we were big football fans. And then as I got to be a teenager, I kind of got more into skateboarding and things like that. And the X Games were in San Francisco. I went to that. So I was always sort of a fan, and it was very much a family thing.
So you're a candlestick girl.
Yes, I have been in Candlestick and Extra Innings. I have the buttons to prove it. We were too young to know. It was the old Giants ballpark that was freezing. So they literally, if you stayed to the end of an extra inning game, they would give you this certain button that was sort of a badge of honor.
Yeah, the crew. I'm totally blanking right now. It's crew.
It was another Latin phrase.
It's French.
Was it French?
It's French. I think maybe it's Latin. I should know this. Shame on me. I'm gonna get
someone Google it for us. But yeah, it was a badge of honor.
Adrian's behind the scenes. She's Googling. It's a pen that you were given. And I always share this memory of Candlestick. So growing up, from Petaluma.
Oh, nice.
We would get tickets to A's or Giants games in elementary school for good grades. And you'd get an envelope, and my brother and I would be so excited. We'd take it home to our dad. We didn't open it because you didn't know what team you got to go see. So we'd give it to my dad, and he'd open it, and you knew immediately if it was Candlestick or the Coliseum by his face. Because if he was like, it was the Coliseum, because it was going to be a warm, sunny day before they built Mount Davis and ruined the stadium. And then if it was Candlestick, he's like, all right, let's get the blankets, and you knew it was going to be a journey. And every single game at Candlestick, I begged for a carnation chocolate malt with the wooden spoon. And
in the helmet, in the mini helmet?
Helmet, my dad was like, you're never going to finish it. It's too cold. And no, Dad, this time I'm going to finish. Not once, Ilana, did I finish that malt. That poor man probably spent $1,000 on malts over the years.
Oh, good though.
Because your hands just get so cold.
My fun fact, Giants kind of him. I was at the World Series earthquake game with my dad.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
We have to hear that story.
Yeah. So that, I remember I was like in third grade. My dad pulled me out of school to go to the game. I felt so special. Going to a World Series game. And then I remember exactly where we were. We were in the concession area. We had just gotten some hot dogs or whatnot. And I kind of laugh about it now. My dad, as the earthquake started, my dad kind of pulled me under the awning of the concession area. And thinking back, I'm like, I feel like it should have been the opposite.
I know, like that's,
into the open. But truly, because the stadium was so big, you obviously felt it, but didn't feel like, oh my God, this is a major earthquake. It was just kind of, people were laughing, like kind of joking about, was this a sign to change the series? Because I know like the Giants have been down a couple games, and people went to their seats and were still hanging out. And, before we all had cell phones, so it wasn't like we were getting immediate updates.
Right.
And then we thought, we obviously knew they postponed the game when we thought it was because the electricity, they couldn't get the lights on. So everyone starts, leaving the ballpark. And the first sign that things were wrong is we literally saw players in the parking lot going to their car, fully in uniform, had not changed. We're getting out of there. And we're like, oh. And then of course, on the drive home, we, figured all the problems. And it was a very, very, very long drive home.
Will Clark tells the story of like climbing into the stands to get his family and haul out of there. I was in a volleyball. I was a lot older than you. I was in high school and was in the middle of a volleyball game up in Healdsburg. So we're pretty far from the epicenter, and we were warming up maybe, and all the pennants on the walls in the gym were shaking. And I thought like I was getting a migraine or something. I just was like, what's going on? I don't feel so good. And then you heard somebody go, earthquake, and everybody ran outside. And I cannot remember, you guys, how we got the news. Somebody must have gone to their car and turned on the radio. That must have been what happened, because we all had parents that were working in the city. And then the bridge collapsed, so we got all this news like while we were playing our game. It was an insane experience. And so many of our girls my parents were actually on vacation. My grandparents were with me, which was so rare. Wow. And like you were trying to get a hold of your loved one trying to come home from work. So crazy, crazy time. But yeah.
Isn't it funny you had to like check the radio to know what happens, and now we just check Twitter.
I know that. Yeah. And I don't know that as a fact. It's the only thing I can think of, that somebody went to their car and turned on the radio to get an update. So anyway, okay, great. Walk down memory lane. Candlestick Girls Unite. And
Bay Area earthquake trauma. Yes.
Yes, I know.
That's why I'm not a Cali girl 100%. I can't handle those.
PTSD. I know people who come here, they're always like, I never stop under anything that could collapse on me. Like, I understand. Where did you go to college, and what did you major in?
So I went to UCLA for my undergrad, and I majored in communications. And then I also got my master's at USC in communication management.
Ooh, was that hard to go to USC after UCLA?
Not really. I know people always ask, but obviously UCLA, like my undergrad is like sort of your identity and like your college experience. So when I went to grad school, it was, it's geared towards people who work. So the classes were at night. Obviously by the time I was living off campus, and so I didn't really have that college experience at SC. It was a great program. Like I really, really enjoyed the coursework, but I didn't have a sweatshirt from USC. So yeah, I never identified as a Trojan. I just enjoyed the education, but
you didn't dive
in for sure.
How do you feel your undergrad, your grad work plays a role in what you do today? And do you find that they connect?
Yeah, I think I'm probably one of the few people out there who actually majored in something they do besides like a doctor. So I know so many people end up switching, but I think there's just a lot of fundamentals with a communication degree, which frankly could also be an English degree or other liberal arts, which is just really strong writing, really strong communicating, organization. I wasn't in the kind of program at the time. I think there are more specific PR programs now, but we weren't necessarily writing press releases or doing those kind of things, but really just having strong writing skills is also very important, and strong creative skills. A lot of what we do is storytelling and sort of finding the story. So, I think my education at UCLA was really helpful for starting those skills. And then I felt very sharpened by USC. So they were also very helpful, but I think we'll get to it. But, that true experience and understanding what you're doing more came from internships.
Let's go right into that.
What next? Look at you.
What internships did you have and how were they helpful?
So when I was at UCLA, my first internships were at record labels, and I thought I wanted to work in music. Like I was kind of a scene kid. I went to shows all the time. So I truly thought that was what I wanted to do. And so my first internship strictly for the elder emos who might know what this is, was at a place called Drive Through Records, which was like a punk rock record label in the Valley. And that was a very fun internship. But really we were just doing whatever stuff in the, organizing mailers in the back and kind of helping the bands. And then I did a couple other really PR oriented internships, one at Warner Brother Records and one, at Epic Records. And that taught me more on the PR side, but frankly, I would say sometimes internships, there's a lot of value in finding out what you don't want to do as much as what you want to do. So I learned, because I loved music so much, sometimes seeing the inner workings of it actually was a little bit like, I don't want to say depressing, but just
disappointing sometimes.
Yeah. Like, you're like, why a certain band might get on the cover of Rolling Stone? And you're like, oh, it's not because they're just the best or, the music is genuinely like so important. It's like because the publicist knows this person and they owe someone a favor for this kind of thing. And it just it's like if you're working at your favorite restaurant, you're like, you might not want to see what's happening in the back. So it felt like that.
And like also meeting your favorite athletes too. We always warn people, be careful about meeting your heroes.
So it was also at the time when Napster was really like hitting the scene and causing a lot of issues within the record industry. And frankly, at that point, they weren't quite innovating to figure it out. They were figuring out how to stop people. And so I would get pulled into the executives' offices and, like I'm the resident college kid, like, how do we get college kids to stop stealing music? And I'd be like, I don't know, make better albums. Cause someone is, like Eminem or Adele, someone's selling 10 million albums a year. It's just, if it's not your artist, it's, you couldn't do the thing anymore where you have one or two good songs on an album and then the rest of them are trash, but you didn't know it till you bought the album. Now people know if the album's good or not. So it was just kind of a damper of an industry at the time too. And so that led me, I went to grad school. And when I was in grad school, I was able to do ESPN's internship program, which was incredible. So it's a paid internship, which, at the time was like, I don't know if it's even still rare, but it was very rare at the time. And of course, being at ESPN and working on the X Games was amazing. So I actually started off helping on the music side because they would have bands play X Games. And then I transitioned more to the sports side. And that's really where I discovered that I liked working in sports. Again, if music was my number one thing, maybe sports was my number two. And I was like, okay, the inner workings of this don't give me the ick. Like, I like it. And the people seemed nicer and friendlier. I guess, like the vibe was better. And so that's really where I fell in love and learned about the sports PR side. And I had a couple of really good mentor bosses who really taught me the ropes, that writing the press release, working with the media, setting up the interviews, being organized, like those sort of nuts and bolts of the job. Again, that you might not quite get in the classroom, but really, really got hands-on in that internship. And that was absolutely sort of the start of my sports career.
That's so cool. And I cannot thank you enough for saying, we've had almost every guest say it's just as important to find out what you don't want to do. For the young ones listening, like they get trapped in this, I have to know what I want to do. I'm 18, I'm going to school, I have to know. And no, you don't. It's really more important to figure out what you don't want to do because it helps you figure out where you want to go. So,
and even if you think at 18, you're probably wrong anyways, or the 18-year-old version of you and the 35-year-old version of you might want very different things. So I think it's, just allow yourself to change your mind, to learn, to figure out, to pivot. Like it's totally okay. And I'm more concerned about an 18-year-old who thinks they have everything dialed and figured out than someone who's unsure.
I know. I live with two of them. Yeah. Come help me. So you did these internships. What was your after school first paid gig? Like, here we go. We're on our way to starting our career. And was it PR? And what did you do?
Not quite. So my first job after grad school was for this marketing company. And this is really going to age me because it was before social media and they did street marketing. So they would create hype, which we now would do on Instagram for movies or for albums coming out. So the perfect example of what I worked on was Lucha Libre, Nacho Libre, the Jack Black movie was coming out about the luchadors. And so we would hire like college kids to go around popular neighborhoods and hand out stickers and keychains, like dressed in a full Lucha Libre costume. So for example, like San Diego, I would map out the Gaslight District, what bars were cool, like on a Friday night, create a route for my little college guys to dress in their costume, go, and they would take pictures and, however many things they handed out. And then we'd make a recap report and send it to the movie studio. Like, here's all the people who found out about the movie with our ridiculous thing. So it was interesting. There was some very, very interesting people I worked with. Like randomly, my boss with her friend was the person who wrote the movie How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Yeah. It's like, so she had this, and then she went on to work for the Obama White House. So like, this was like the weirdest middle stop in her career. But it was not a fun job. Maybe I had it was like in Hollywood, I was on the West Side. It was a long commute. It was in a very shady neighborhood. But it was a job. And then, so kind of backtrack a little bit. So I had done that internship at the X Games. And then I had been doing seasonal work with them. So when they have events, Summer X Games, Winter X Games, I got hired on to work, a few months on. And then when the event's over, you'd have a couple months off. And when that was in grad school, that was amazing. Like it worked out. One of the sort of 2 months off was when I was writing my thesis. So like it was perfect. But once I finished grad school and I needed a job with benefits and, like kind of a full-time job, that's where, I was like starting to look, and that's where I took that marketing job. And then 2-3 months after I took that job, there was an opening for a job at Red Bull. And it was this like perfect communications sports job. And actually the people at X Games who were very kind, and I think would have wanted to give me a full-time position if there was one, there just wasn't at the time, really advocated, kind of got my resume on the desk of someone over there, gave me a good recommendation. And then I got an interview with Red Bull.
Wow. That's great. While you were at Red Bull, what were some of your favorite events?
So my two favorite, of course, like going to the Olympics was amazing, but actual Red Bull events. There's one called Red Bull Rampage, which is still ongoing. It's a mountain bike event in the middle of Zion National Park in Utah, like sort of the biggest, most iconic free ride mountain event in the world. And we would just work out in these beautiful, amazing landscapes for a week. So it's kind of like being paid to go on the most amazing camping trip ever. And just, literally, truly, everyone was like in a good mood. I don't know. It just was like such a beautiful place to be that everyone was like very happy. And it's a very cool event. And then the other one, sort of on the opposite end, was the skateboard event that we created called Red Bull Mani Mania, which was an event that was held in New York, kind of under the Brooklyn Bridge at the skate park. And it grew year after year. So the first year, we just had this one big event in New York, and then they started having national qualifiers to get to New York, and then they did international qualifiers. So at one point, we had probably kids from like 20 different countries coming to New York for this final. And some of them had never been to the States before, never been to New York before. So I remember like taking these kids to go get pancakes or just do like very quintessential like American New York things. And it was just such a fun experience to see them experiencing New York for the first time, and as skateboarders, like getting to skate these iconic places. And so it was really cool to see an event grow to this thing that truly brought people from all over the world together, but was still very core, still very cool, gritty New York. And I loved being in New York every time we did it. So that was definitely one of my favorites.
You said something that really got me thinking, and it's about networking, Ilana. And you mentioned that getting that job at Red Bull, these people for your seasonal job were advocating for you. What kind of advice can you share for those listening about the importance of relationships in your jobs, even if it's one you don't really like or you don't think you're going to stick, but how, the relationships you built at this seasonal job helped you get into Red Bull, and also advocating for yourself, asking those people, will you put in a good word for me? Will you put my resume at the top of the pile? Like, what would you advise on that for folks listening?
Yeah, I mean, I think people always appreciate and remember a hard worker, someone who just gets the stuff done. I would say like a phrase I tell everyone, eliminate from your vocabulary is like, oh, that's not my job. Like, I'm very, very experienced. I still sometimes have to like tape the boxes together and bring them to the post office, or, like every once in a while you just got to do stuff. So especially if you're an intern or younger, like, please don't ever say that, but yeah, you just kind of can tell the people who stand out and really are dedicated to getting it done right and reliable and trustworthy. And, as someone now who's more senior, I fairly often get people sending me job listings saying like, hey, do you know anyone? And a lot of times they are sort of a little bit more entry level junior. And I'm at the point where I'm like, oh, I don't really know that many more like junior people anymore. I've kind of like gotten to that point, but I would be so excited if I knew someone to recommend for a job, like, again, like your senior people are probably getting asked around like, hey, if you know anyone. And so, if you can be that person that sticks in their mind, like, actually, yeah, I know someone who would be perfect for that. Like, like if they think you're talented, like we want to help our friend hire someone good. It benefits all around. And yeah, I think you do have to advocate and ask yourself, or, I think find a mentor, someone you work with that, just talk about, like casually one day at lunch, like, here's where I see my career going. Here's what I want. Kind of let them know where you see yourself. Because again, sort of like wheel, like if someone doesn't know that you want to move into marketing in this way, or actually I really want to do something on the social team, like you got to kind of advocate for yourself so that someone can think of you when that opening comes.
100%. I always say, oh my God, I love your advice, by the way. That's not my job. Stop saying that. And I always say, I'm going to put it out into the universe. Just put out into the universe what you want to do. Even if I'm in my kitchen by myself, I'll be like, this is what I want to do. This, just like hearing it out loud and then getting the courage to tell people, because if you don't, they never know. They don't know. That's great.
But if you're nice and easy to work with and reliable, again, like people want to help you, and people will support you. And yeah, again, like those job listings do come. So it might not be a month after you ask, it might not be 3 months after you ask, but like 9 months later, it might happen, and you want to be on their minds.
Yeah, and you were definitely on my mind for this podcast to invite you because Ilana, when I worked, it was so amazing. So when I worked with Ilana, she would communicate with us exactly the athletes we were going to get, what times they'd be there, if there was a holdup, if there was a problem. And as much as that is a PR job and to get people from point A to point Z and move them along, there are a lot of people, as we all know, that do not communicate at all. They're like, what you see is what you get. Maybe you were promised 10 minutes, you get 2, right? So I just really appreciated your professionalism and always having that information for everybody, because it was so vital with all of our shows that were timed out. And for me personally, the Olympics are like my favorite event ever, because kind of what you talked about with New York is there's that international crowd and just feeling that vibration and that energy of everybody cheering for their country is unbelievable. How would you describe what it's like to attend the Olympics?
I think you nailed it. Like there is just a certain energy. It's almost hard to explain, but you literally can feel almost this positive vibration when you walk around because there's people from so many different countries and everyone's there for a really cool experience. So just your interactions on the street, like as you're on the metro getting to something, like people just seem very friendly, open to talking to each other. You know, you're sitting in a crowd. You know, a lot of times you might be sitting next to someone's family. You're like, oh, you're related to that person. And like all of a sudden you're like cheering for their kid because like you're emotionally connected to what they're watching. And yeah, you just really are sharing this really incredible experience with people. And it's so, you know, fun, but it's also, I mean, from the athlete side, so like emotional and huge. Like for me, like one of the biggest honors I feel like I've had is literally to sit next to and with people's families that you're seeing not just the culmination of this event or the season, but truly a lifetime of investment. Again, not just by the athlete, but their whole family, their whole network who's been pouring into this, you know, probably since they were like 6 years old.
Yep.
For sports. And to watch it, you know, come to fruition, watch people win gold medals, and you realize how important that moment is. Again, it's not just because like I won the event, but like I have fulfilled this life dream for everyone around me. It's so powerful and so cool. And it is cool to almost watch someone's life change in that moment. Like I'll never forget in Sochi. I was with Mark McMorris, who's a Canadian snowboarder, and he was on the first event first day. It was a slope style. So he won the first medal for Canada on the very first day. And I think he got bronze. Like it wasn't like he even won the event, but bless Canada because they celebrate every medal like it's a huge hero. But I literally was watching him when he posted the photo on his Instagram with his medal. Like his phone was breaking because he was getting so many likes and so many like interactions on it that like he had to shut his phone off. It was melting down. And literally his life changed in that moment. And it turned out after the Olympics, someone ran the data and he had gained the most followers of anyone on Instagram during the games. So I actually like watched that happen. But I also can't forget we went to the broadcast center. So there's like a big media center that they have where like all the stations kind of broadcast from. So we went there with him and we walked into the CBC newsroom. And everyone stood up and applauded. And like, honestly, they're supposed to be more like neutral and professional, but everyone was like, screw it. And just the whole newsroom applauded for him. And it was such a cool thing to see like this little snowboarder kid from Regina, you know, like get celebrated. And so like the moments like that just make it so magical and you realize how big it is.
It is really an honor to witness those moments. I just did a podcast and I was asked about the World Series that I covered and were those my favorite moments? And I was like, actually, my favorite is like call-ups when a player gets called up to the big leagues and they come and their family's there, or the day they get drafted and I get to watch mom and dad, you know, because it is this huge family investment in this moment in this kid's life, but everyone has had a part and a role. And to watch that come to fruition, like you said, it's such an honor. So I have kind of a random one. It wasn't on the list, so bear with me. But this is what I do. For Celeste, she's like, can you stick to the script? But I'm curious because, you know, in what I do with the Giants, we have a specific PR team that we work with. And when we have interview requests for players, we go through PR to help us set it up. My husband covers the Raiders, same deal. PR staff, you want time with the player, you go through PR. How was your role different, the same with Red Bull? You know, not working for a team necessarily, like a sports team. And then why did you branch out on your own?
So with Red Bull, I would say I probably was not normal. And I didn't realize it until I did. But so I started working on events, you know, like talked about like Manny Mania, Rampage, and like the really sports events. And then it started in 2008 around the Olympics. BMX racing started in the Olympics, and it was a little more action sports, what I worked on. So I just did sort of the normal home PR around those athletes, again, sort of on behalf of Red Bull. You know, they'd wear their Rebel helmets and we'd do interviews. And then since I was working on them, I kind of added on our beach volleyball and our swimming. And then in 2010, actually like really a year before, and this is like one of those career things that was such a random just set of circumstances. And again, like you never know when your break might come, but I had been, again, like really working on summer sports. And then at the time, Red Bull sponsored two of the biggest winter Olympic hopefuls, which was Shaun White and Lindsey Vonn.
It was at the time. Chapstick. I know Lindsay from Chapstick.
At the time, Sean was filming and working on his secret half pipe in Silverton, Colorado, in the middle of nowhere. So this was like a year before the Olympics. And at the same exact time, Lindsay was about to win her overall title. So for like the season right before the Olympic season. And so, and you kind of knew mathematically when she was about to win her title, you know, you kind of, okay, she's probably going to get it this weekend. So all the people on my side who would normally work on it were literally in the middle of nowhere in a half pipe. And then the ski team, who also works on it, was in Switzerland or wherever the last race was. So they sort of needed someone in the US to kind of just help get the communications out, work on some things. And Red Bull was our primary sponsor. So they did a lot for her. So I sort of got dubbed like, hey, can you work on that this weekend? And I was like, I didn't know anything about ski racing, but I was like, sure. So long story short, I went in this course of a week. I'd never, met Lindsay in person. I never worked on ski racing of course, she won the title. We did all this press stuff. We set up a media tour and I was on a plane. I think actually we met up in Salt Lake or Park City where she lived at first when she came right home, and we did some stuff. And then we went straight to New York and we did the Today Show and we met with the New York Times and met with all these big outlets. And the people who kind of knew, like the sports journalists really understood how big she was going to be for the Olympics. And then since I kind of started with those meetings and those early articles, they're like, you can just kind of stay on it. And so I ended up really specifically working with her more than like on events. And so it was almost like Red Bull became her personal publicist. And we kind of were doing the same for Shaun White. Like my colleague became very involved with Shaun's stuff. And so I think we as a sponsor probably like took more onus than most people did, but like, they do more for athletes than a lot of sponsors. Like a lot of sponsors, it's like hat, sticker, paycheck, see you later. And Red Bull like really, really builds and develops their athletes and is more of a partner and like a family than just a sponsor. And so I started, like working with Lindsay the whole year and working on her Sports Illustrated cover and working on these big night show appearances. And then that sort of pushed my trajectory to working with the athletes specifically. Now on the other side of it, I'm like, most sponsors are not like that. Most sponsors will promote their specific thing. They have 3 interviews contractually with an athlete and they will pick those, but they're not like running their PR wing.
Right.
So I would say like it was unusual and I didn't realize it was unusual. I just kind of did what I thought made sense. I thought, I think it was right. Like if Red Bull is the one helping her, it's almost like a free publicist or helping anyone on this. They're not paying for a PR. So they're getting a free service as an athlete. And then not to be cynical, but like, again, like if say we're at Red Bull booking it, I'm going to make sure the helmet was looking good, the hat's on right, the messaging's right for the brand so that we get ourselves in there. And so it kind of was a win-win for everyone. And that's how I sort of started on this cycle of working with the athletes and really building the athlete campaigns for the Olympics. And then I did that for almost 15 years. And then truly the transition came because of COVID. I think if my advice would be like, you probably should not stay at one company that long. I think, to advance in your career, it's like 3, 4, 5 years, maybe start looking. But Red Bull was so fun and there's so many cool trips and I went to all these Olympics and did so many amazing things. It is very, very, very hard to think of leaving because it's so cool. And then COVID came along and like everyone else, we were working from home, everything fun was canceled. And, again, not their fault, but it just sort of took away all the glittery fun stuff. And it was just like a job at that point. And so I had sort of in my mind had planned to leave around that time anyways. I think my like mental plan was like, okay, after the Tokyo Olympics in the summer of 2020, I will start looking in the fall. And then obviously the Olympics got postponed. And so I really have this battle of like, do I stay an extra year to work on an Olympics that I don't even know is going to happen? Or do I kind of honor the timing I had like really had in my heart to like move on? And I think that COVID again helped because there wasn't this big transition. Because I think, the biggest transition of having your own business or working from home is like, you're not in the office interacting with people. You don't have all these things to do, but I didn't have those things to do anyways, so the transition happened organically to working from home. And so at the end of 2020 is when I decided to start my own company. And, I had for years had people telling me like, oh, you should like, have you ever thought about doing your own agency, doing your own thing? Because I think, again, at the time, I didn't realize I was acting like a personal publicist already. But I'd always kind of shoot it off and didn't think I was very entrepreneurial or didn't think I'd want to miss out on that office environment. And again, kind of once you get used to working from home, like the first few months I hated it, you know, I was so lonely and so bummed. And then you kind of like get used to it. And then you're like, oh, like I can just like make my lunch in my fridge and I don't have to like pack and meal prep and I can take a walk. And you're like, wait, there's some perks in here. Like, I mean, there's job perks, but there's, you know, or office perks, but there's perks here too. And so once I was ready for that transition from almost like what the day-to-day life would be is like when I decided, okay, like end of 2020, like I've been, the true answer is like I had this like thing in my mind where I'm like, I cannot turn 40 and still work at this company. Like, because it's a young person's company. And again, like the coolest place to be when you're 25, like absolutely. But like when you're not 25 anymore and you don't want to go out to the parties and you don't want to do all the fun things, you know, like I distinctly remember being in Vegas for some event and we had a table at one of those nightclubs that's probably like a $10,000 table right next to the DJ booth. And like everyone's like trying to come hang out at the table because, you know, we have bottle service and all that. And I was like, I just want to be alone in my bed, like watching TV. Like I do not want to be. And truly like that someone would love to be in that experience, right? Like there's like would live to be at a table with all these cool athletes at a cool nightclub with some DJ. And I'm like, I hate EDM. I want to be in my bed. I'm too old for this. And that's really fine. If you're not enjoying it, like you shouldn't be doing it. And someone else absolutely will be in my place to enjoy that. So yeah, that was kind of the line of like, I gotta figure something out, and the kind of stars aligned to start my own thing. And that's where I went.
What's been the best part of,
hey,
go ahead.
Celeste, I know I'm interrupting
Jump
you.
in, Amy.
Well, I know I'm so bad about that, but we didn't write it down here. Gold Tree. Why? What's the story behind the name Gold Tree?
So my name, Ilana, means tree in Hebrew. And so, and then like, true story. So like my like moniker and like Instagram, everything is like Ilana Red because I have red hair. And so like at first I wanted to be Red Tree, but that was taken. And then I was like, okay, a lot of my career was built on like helping people around their gold medals and like kind of that moment. So then I just turned it to Gold Tree and that was that. Yeah.
Very cool.
Sorry, I had to get that one out of the way. Go ahead.
Good start. Good start. What has been the best part and the most challenging part of owning your own company?
The best part is you that freedom to pick and choose your clients and kind of choose your workload and just a lot more freedom. Again, like, you know, even like Red Bull, I had a lot of freedom, but you're still like working on one brand and one thing, where now I get a variety and I get to, yeah, like just really be around things I really care about, really believe in, and can put a lot of energy into. And truly like the schedule is awesome. Like I mean, I work hard, but like I take a nap almost every day, you know, like I get to go to my like 7:30 CrossFit class almost every day. Like I get to integrate the parts of like my other life, my, you know, normal person, not working life that like are really important to me. And yeah, like now I'm like, oh my God, I can't imagine being in an office like all day and like not getting to take a break or like, you know. So that is wonderful. And then the hardest part is just, you know, there is a lot of uncertainty, and you have to kind of become comfortable with uncertainty when you have your own, you know, you're freelancer, you have your own agency. I have no idea 6 months from now what's going on. Like I am stacked, booked and busy right now, but I could not tell you what next year will look like, or this, you know, end of this year maybe even will look like. But I have just had like people tell me, you know, like you just kind of got to trust the process, and sometimes it's feast or famine. I heard that a lot from my freelance friends when I started, that yeah, like sometimes you have those slow moments and it does feel really disconcerting. Like, I don't know when my next big check's going to come. And then somehow it always has come. So I just have faith in that process. And I've had to learn to not over freak out if I'm not busy. You know, sometimes things come. So you just have to be comfortable with that. And I think obviously like there's a bit of like, you have to be smart with your money and save and have enough money where like if you had a slow month, it wouldn't really impact you. So, you know, I think you got to start out with the right like backing, where you're not going to be like literally go hungry if you didn't have you know, a full roster 1 month. But luckily, I wasn't ever in a position to really be stressed about specific months to months. And yeah, and then it's worked out. So you just kind of got to keep the faith in that part.
What can you share about some of the specifics regarding your job? And I'm just going to throw it out there and you decide what you want to comment on, if anything. But like when you talk about, you know, it's a cyclical type of business. And are you out there actively looking for clients? Like if you see someone, you're like, I want to represent them, I want to work with them. Are clients coming to you? Is that both? Do you get paid a monthly retainer, or do you charge hourly? Like how do you figure out those kinds of things to, build your business? Or what would you advise somebody who wanted to have their own PR firm or work on their own, on how to work those things out? Because I know those are the things that stress me out about being a contractor.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I have good advice. I mean, I don't want to sound like I don't, but like almost everything has come to me, like word of mouth,
Referral.
referrals, word of mouth. Whether on the athlete side, like a lot of my individual athletes have come from another athlete, a teammate, someone, things like that. And then a lot of the more like corporate business clients have also come from some kind of referral. Someone I used to work with, who's somewhere else, or someone who knows someone I used to work with. And so I've had almost everything kind of come to me. I mean, every once in a while, like you might poke your head and be like, oh, I'd be interested in that if that comes available, kind of thing. But I probably don't have to do much proactive trying, which is maybe I should do more, but I've somehow it's always worked out, right? That things that I've been interested in have come to me. And, I think there's a bit of marketing yourself where like, yeah, like if I have a big article, a big win, I'm posting that on LinkedIn, like I'm kind of making sure that like my work and my wins get out there. So that people, if they come across me, like might see what I'm doing, but I haven't ever really hit up someone out of the blue and been like, hey, are you looking for PR services? So, I think I have the luxury of having like a 15-year career before I started this. If I started fresh, obviously be very different. So I do think having, that corporate experience or some experience where people know you and know your work helps a lot when you then go out on your own. And then, we kind of have like a network of people similar to me, like other people who worked at companies and started their own agency. So sometimes we refer work to each other. So sometimes I get things that just might not be either exactly my specialty, or I just might not have time to work on it. And like I have 2 or 3 people that I can think of that I know are great that can work on that. And then sometimes that works vice versa. So we also kind of help each other out in this little freelancer world.
Yeah, that's important. And I know with my publicist, what she talks about a lot when she's working with an athlete is, so she'll do like a retainer, like a monthly retainer. And then when you get the wins, there's a fee on that as well, like in her world. And a lot of times some athletes will give pushback on the retainer, and she's like, what do you think I'm doing? Like I'm pitching you to Sports Illustrated or to these other outlets to get either your career or your foundation or whatever it is you want to get out there. And it's hard to quantify the hours that she works, because she works odd hours. You're constantly answering emails or pitching ideas and all of this. So I don't know what you can share on that side, but I think people want to know, like, well, how do you get paid?
Yeah, so I do basically all in retainer. So just a monthly fee for my services. And, I really, really love the direct athlete part. That's not where I make most of my money. Because I'm not necessarily working with like football and basketball players who make millions. I'm working with like Olympians or people who like, maybe are doing well in their career, but like still kind of modest compared to, people who have literally multi-million-dollar contracts. So I'm not necessarily charging them the high retainer, but those are my bread and butter, like love, passion kind of work. And then I have corporate brands who do pay a bit more. So those are the retainers that really pay the bills to afford me to charge an athlete, not a crazy amount.
Gotcha.
Like I probably could charge more, but I also in my mind, calculate how much work someone is, how many hours it really is. And I price it. And then, we kind of joke, like we do have, this does not refer to athletes normally, but like how difficult is a client going to be? And like, is there an extra fee for someone who's going to like call you in off hours or just be like fussy? And so you're like, okay, is this going to be an easygoing person, or is there going to be a being a little bit more difficult? So you got to calculate that. It's like almost like your own personal energy fee. Because there's people that I love that take more hours, but I enjoy it so much it doesn't feel like it. And there's people that you're just like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a pain to explain this thing to someone that you've explained 5 times.
Or get them to agree to do it, or there's
price based on your energy
behavior.
but yeah, I do say like that, I anchor these like bigger kind of brand clients to then help fund maybe my 1 or 2 sort of like fun clients.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
I think I'm going to add some personal energy fees. I like that. Like after the tax, personal energy fee.
Wait, don't do it to me, Celeste, right?
Never. Trust is so important with what you do with your clients. How do you build that trust and maintain that trust with all of the clients that you have?
I think, on the like purely PR side, I found like I always try to get them a win really fast. And like learn what they want, like something that they would think is cool, and like try to get that in the first couple months. So they're like, okay, like I see something happening here. Like I see a win that like actually makes me feel like I'm getting something I was hoping for. I think there's like that kind of work trust. And then there's just that, reliability, answering their questions, like when they ask, or being there to chat. And then there's a lot of it, it's like just not talking about work. I as at Red Bull, like I really advocated for just those like coffee and breakfast meetings where like you talk about whatever. Because one, like, again, like it's not always so like transactional of like, hey, I'm hitting you up because I need something. It's like you can just talk to them about like funny stuff that happened, or just like normal conversations you have with your normal friends. And a lot of times in those coffees and those breakfasts, you'd end up learning something really interesting about the athlete that is useful for PR, and they just like wouldn't maybe have thought to tell you that right away. Like one I always remember is we were working at Red Bull with a rugby player named Carlin Isles, who was an Olympian, who's like the fastest man in rugby. And we had actually been trying to figure out what shoot to do with him. And like it was quite hard to access a rugby field in Southern California that wasn't tied to a university that was like a Pepsi school or a Coke school. And so in this delay in finding a place to shoot, we end up like hanging out and having breakfast one day. And he starts telling us about his childhood. And he had this rough, but like sort of amazing childhood in terms of like he had been in foster care and had been adopted at 5, like a truly wonderful family. And then he really like took to running and sprinting like everywhere. Like he'd race the school bus, he'd race down the hallways, like he'd do all this stuff as like a way to kind of keep himself out of trouble. And anyways, he's telling us all these stories from his childhood and all these quirky things he did as a kid. And I'm just like picturing this visual in my mind. So we ended up doing the shoot. We went to his hometown and actually literally had him back running the hallways of his high school. Now is this like full speed realized man, who's achieving his dreams, like, and basically like acting out the things he was like picturing in his head when he was a child. And all that came because we sat and chatted, and like he didn't know he was telling us something super crazy and interesting. It wasn't like we were interviewing him like, tell me about your life and like what we should shoot. It was just like him rapping about life, and it turned into something really fascinating. So I think you got to have that time and investment and like like caring about them as a person. And sometimes your conversations are not going to be anything about work. It's just going to be about like who they're dating and what's going on, or their family being like a pain, or like the normal things you talk about with your friends. Like as you invest that time into people, like hopefully they see you and trust you and think that you're there for them.
Yeah, I think that's so key for a publicist, because you have to believe that this person representing you has your best interest. You have to believe that. That's how you're going to be successful, is by genuinely having their best interest. I have another rando though for you. I just want to know what you'll share about your life. Like you talked about getting your, moving into your own firm, and now you can do CrossFit and you can go for a walk if you want to, and make a little more time for yourself. But when I see successful publicists, they are always with their clients at events, and like you're going to Paris for the Olympics. What would be kind of your ratio of time spent at events with your clients and being there with them versus not? And how impactful is it to be able to move around with your athletes and go to these things with them? And then do you get time for yourself?
Yeah, I think people, I don't know, to me, like, again, like all people be like, oh my God, you're so busy. Like I'm seeing on Instagram. I'm like, but I still have a lot of hours I sit on the couch and watch stupid TV. Like, I think I'm not literally busy 24 hours a day, always doing something. Like, yes, like when I'm at the Olympics, I will be full on for 3 weeks, like obviously like not doing anything for myself, probably. But that is like once every couple of years, like very special experience. A lot of times, like a lot of things I travel to, it's like 2 days here, 3 days here. Like I would say even like my upcoming stretch is very busy, but it's like I'm still home this week. Okay, next weekend, I also work with IndyCar. So I'm going to an IndyCar race next weekend, but I'm just there Friday night to Sunday night. And then I come home for a few days and then I go to Olympic trials. But again, it's just like 2, 3 days. And then this is the part like I might come home for like one day and then go to a shoot in Austin because we have all these post trial shoots, and then come home and then like maybe one more media shoot and then come home for one more day and then go to Paris. But in between some of those, there's still like 3, 4, 5, 6 days where I'm just home and I'm doing my normal thing. And, like it's not literally like 24 hours a day busy. I mean, there are periods like I had like maybe the craziest stretch was just like in April. And again, this was just, again, like a rare 2 week period out of a year where like I had the Olympic Media Summit, which was in New York. So I was there for a few days, crazy long days. And then, so like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday I was there. Wednesday was 100 days out for the Olympics. So then we had an event with Omega in New York. And then I went straight from New York to Tampa because we had a shoot with Caleb Dressel for Omega and an event that night. And then Friday morning, I flew back to LA. We had an IndyCar race in LA, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Sunday night, red-eyed back to New York because Monday we had a shoot with Gabby for a cover, my athlete. And then Tuesday we had a big announcement event. And then Tuesday night I came home. So that was like 10 days of a lot, but that is like a rare, rare thing. And then I would say 90% of the time I am doing nothing on my couch and people will just see the Instagram post and be like, oh my God. But like, yeah, I don't post every time I'm doing nothing. So it's, to me, it's manageable. And obviously I have a certain lifestyle. Like I don't have kids. I don't have things that depend on me to live. Like I started buying, like I love plants, but I started buying these easy plants, which are the ones like with the like self-watering pot. Which like have worked out great so far. Again, so I'm like, okay, I buy plants that won't die if I'm gone for a while. And I don't have a lifestyle where like me being gone is like super detrimental to other things. Even like I would love to have a dog, but like this lifestyle isn't really cohesive to having or conducive to having a dog. So like maybe one day, but like right now that doesn't work. So there are like those kind of things you have to weigh into your choice. I am always so amazed by colleagues and people I know who like have kids and do this, like, where like they really are balancing it all. I mean, they still do it too. So it's not like it's impossible. I see plenty of people who do make it work, but for me, I've simplified my like normal, everyday life so that it's not too overwhelming if I'm gone for a bit.
I appreciate your vulnerability there. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, we got a couple more before we wrap it up. What would be some first steps for recent college grads if they wanted to follow in your footsteps?
I think that there is a bit of like being in the trenches where like, so a PR agency is probably a good entry into the PR world where you will probably work on a variety of clients. You will probably be doing the grunt work. You will be probably doing some unglamorous things, but you will learn a lot. And so I think that is like the good grad school for PR if you're not actually in grad school. Again, like maybe not the most glamorous, but you will learn. So I think that's something to really look into. And or small agencies, things like that. But I kind of fell into it through my internship. So again, like, while you're still in college or right after getting those like good internships and then just looking for those opportunities. And, again, it might not be like your favorite thing ever you work on right away, but it might be a step to get to the favorite thing you work on.
And when you think it's not your job, it is your job.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Last question for you. Just, do you have a personal mantra or best piece of life advice that you dole out or live by?
I mean, this is I don't know if it's life advice, but this is one that other colleagues have told me, and I think is maybe my favorite PR person saying, which is It's PR, not the ER. So we take our things very seriously sometimes. We get very stressed. I am so guilty of getting anxiety and stress over some article coming out or someone getting back to you. But you have to realize we are not saving anyone's life in what we do. Again, it's not the ER. It's fine. And kind of like letting go at some point, and realizing that the sun will still rise whether or not this particular article came out in a certain way. So yeah, I have to tell myself that all the time.
I'm taking that one. I'm using it.
It's great.
Important to remember that.
I did not create that. I cannot take credit, but it is.
All right. You created it for us. So we're going to credit you. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thank you.
Talk to you.
Busy lady and off to Paris. And I hope you have a great time. And we should go visit her in Paris. Don't you think, Celeste?
I think we should. We invite ourselves to.
I'll be there.
The Omega House sounds amazing. I'm going to bring a small duffel bag to pull things off the table into.
Champagne, at least. That's okay. My fun Omega story is we were talking about like what they had in the house, and pretty much like it's just champagne and espresso. I'm like, that's how I'm gonna be living off not the champagne, but the espresso for like 3 weeks.
You're speaking my language. All right. Safe travels, Ilana.
Yes,
we hope that we can talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
You guys. Bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Oh man, so cool. I am jealous. I want to go to Paris with her.
I know.
She's
so fun. Yeah, right. She had some great sayings like the personal energy.
Not my job.
ER, yeah. ER, not PR, or PR, not ER. I got it backwards.
Yeah.
But great stuff. All right. Yeah. Episode 25 of Girl, How'd You Get That Gig? Amy, who's going to be at the starting line next?
Are we at the quarter mark of 100?
I know,
I can't believe it. All right. Okay. So very excited to introduce you, Celeste, to Dana Weintraub. So she's actually a pediatrician at Stanford Medicine Children's Health, but she's very sports adjacent. Dana is the co-CEO of BAWSI, BAWSI, and that stands for Bay Area Women's Sports Initiative. It's very, very big, very well respected up here in the North Bay. They help women's sports community engage, inspire, and empower girls in under-resourced neighborhoods and children with disabilities. So they're doing, they are the ER.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of an ER of sports, and she's fantastic. Yeah,
it's gonna be
you're gonna love her. Yeah.
All right. Don't miss it, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Please follow us on all social platforms to win prizes like giant swag. Amy hooking us up.
Yeah.
And Amy's children's book, My Intention Candles, and much, much more. Handle is that Girl Gig Podcast.
Yeah, and we always want to remind you guys that we randomly select a winner from our Instagram page. So you need to be following that. We're going to announce our next winner on our Instagram page. I make a really cute graphic, so please check it out. July 31st will be the next winner. Once again, our handle at Girl Gig Podcast.
Help us spread the word with our podcast. Remember, sharing is caring. Tell your friends to listen on their favorite podcast app or subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's free. For Amy G, I'm Celeste Gehring. Until next time, go get that.